Mohit Aron, a proven tech founder of two multi-billion-dollar technology companies, Nutanix and Cohesity.
If you just hire like a sales guy and expect that guy to just do the selling, that is not the right way. You're actually going to fail. Long story short, the founder actually is the sales guy. When you're a early startup, I would not even recommend that you go get a very big guy.
Is there something like an AI native salesperson?
I'll say the fundamentals of selling have not changed.
You have uniquely scaled 0 to 500 million plus couple of times. As you went through these stages of growth, in that journey, are you hiring for 2 years? Are you hiring for leaders who can run the full thing?
The hope always is when you hire a person, that the person goes
as far as possible. Yeah.
Fortunately, that's the reality. Not everyone is going to scale.
Top 3 mistakes which you have done in go-to-market.
The top mistake I made was not.
Mohit, welcome to Step One. I'm personally really excited to talk to you. He's also my senior from my alma mater, IIT Delhi. So has been a personal hero for a long period of time. Really excited to welcome you to Step One, Mohit.
Thanks for having me here.
So Step One is about one company building topic only. And then, we want your views on that. So the first topic I want to talk to you about, as a technical leader who has scaled 2 companies, I'm sure you will agree with me that go-to-market is at the heart of building large successful businesses. You can have an interesting idea and innovation, but if you don't have distribution, nobody cares. So I want to start with your experience of building the early go-to-market team, right? And what does it look like? What is the founder's role in the first 1 year, let's say? Let's start there and would love your perspective. Yeah.
When we speak about a company that's really early, please note that even the messaging is not perfect.
Right.
You really don't know, what will actually fly with customers, because you have to, try to sell and talk to a bunch of customers before you find out what exactly is resonating with them. So if you just hire like a sales guy and expect that guy to just do the selling, that is not the right way. You're actually going to fail. Because what happens is that you hire a sales guy, you're going to tell the person what to say, and they'll say exactly that. They don't feel they have the luxury to tweak the messaging. They're not the visionary behind the product. So, long story short, the founder actually is the sales guy. So even though you hire a salesperson and maybe the salesperson accompanies the founder, but the real selling at in the early stage of the company is actually done by the founder.
Right.
And the founder is going and talking to customers, every customer, and they're figuring out what's working, what's not. And they're kind of tweaking the messaging, right? And then finally, what you want to do is you want to come to a point where the resulting messaging is working, and that is the point when you can start offloading a little bit to that sales guy, because now that you know that this is how you can position the product or your company to the customer, and that's the pitch, that's the message that you can hand off to the sales guy, and then he or she can run with that. But until that happens, you really want to be in the mix. You actually want to be in the mix for other reasons also. Initially, the bet is on you. With the customer is betting on you. So even for that reason, even if like the initial discussions are initiated by the sales guy,
Right.
When he has the right messaging, you may want to be there to close the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You may want to insert yourself even in the middle of the sales. Because frankly, there is a certain level of comfort that customers get. After all, they're betting on a new company, right? The company may turn belly up, but you being there, you giving the assurance that you're always going to be there, that gives a level of comfort. And so the founder has a very important.
Just out of curiosity, when you were doing Cohesity, how many customer meetings or what did you do? What was that phase? Did your ego come in between? Like, man, I'm a successful founder. I built a multi-billion-dollar company. What am I doing? Starting from zero again.
No, that ego went down pretty fast.
Yeah.
When I realized, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. I've learned a lot of things the hard way, and very soon I realized that if I'm not in the mix, this thing is not selling.
Makes sense.
So you got to drop your ego. No matter what ego you have, no matter how successful you've been in the past, every new company is different.
Yeah.
The founder has to start from there.
Perhaps because you had seen success, you knew it more with higher conviction that this is the only way to scale.
This is the only way to succeed. And now that I'm doing my next company, Siphon, right?
Yeah.
which is in the area of kind of sales technology.
Mhm.
Yet I'm playing exactly the same playbook. I'm actually talking to every customer,
Interesting.
tweaking the messaging, same playbook.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and you have a very high bar for product market fit based on the your views which are in the part, which is fascinating. That helped me to think about. Will you share your definition of product market fit for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my definition is, and I'll go slow on this one. Product market fit happens when you can hire an average salesperson, not an elite salesperson. Elite salesperson can sell to whoever. An average sales guy. I mean, you don't get to hire all elite guys, right?
Yeah.
So an average sales guy, and that average salesperson can sell to an average customer because the run of the mill customer will be an average guy.
Yeah.
So an average sales guy can sell to an average customer without involving the headquarters, people in headquarters, because people in headquarters are a limited commodity. So if you can follow this rule, average sales guy can sell to an average customer without involving people in the headquarters, then you basically have repeatability, right? And now you got product market fit.
That is a fascinating bar, and I think it is really important for founders to think that way. I think it's a high bar. Like in my experience, at least, even probably at Series A, Series B, most companies are not there at scale, but it is a really good one to achieve for. But I'm assuming that the first real sales leader hiring happens before this, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then so talk to us a little bit about what are the telltale signs that you are ready for hiring the first sales leader and a couple of early sales reps. What are you looking for in that sales leader?
So, so multiple questions there.
Yeah.
So first of all, when you're a early startup, I would not even recommend that you go get a very big guy, and definitely not, hand off like fancy titles like a CRO or whatever. Because let's think about it. If a person is really good, they're making probably tons of money selling in some other company. Why would they come to your company when you're not selling anything, right? So you're basically going to take possibly a mediocre guy and give that person like a CRO title, right? And that's a big mistake. So
Yeah.
don't do that. Given that the initial selling anyway is done by the founder, my recommendation is to actually think about not hiring that head of sales. Instead, hiring like maybe a first level manager, like a district manager, and hiring that person close to your geography so that you can actually, when this person goes to a customer, you can actually go easily and meet that customer. So you build a small team under that that first level manager, and once that team is successful, you can do something similar in another geography, which might be a little bit further away. And then when you have like a few of these, then you can say, okay, now it's time for us to hire a leader on top. And so you can take one of these people, and that's also something that motivates them. You can put whoever is the best guy, you can either elevate that person, or you can also start hiring or at least start generating a pipeline from external people, and then give the job to whoever is the best. If you feel the internal person is the best, give the job to that person.
Yeah.
Or if the external person is the best, give the job to that person. That also creates a little bit of competition.
Yeah.
This is how I would normally recommend. The only exception I would say is if you know like a great sales leader and they want to join you. Like I've known people in the past, and so Siphon, I've hired my VP of sales.
Yeah.
This is only because I know the person and I'm comfortable going with the person. But otherwise, I would do it exactly like I told you.
Out of curiosity, what was the ARR when you hired the first sales leader, either in Nutanix or Cohesity, more or less?
No, we again the initial sales guy we hired early.
Yeah,
but we were doing the selling. Oh, zero.
Zero. Oh, okay.
Zero.
Yeah.
So remember, we want to get that person so that they learn how to do the selling. Even though we are doing it, they're accompanying us,
Makes
right?
sense. Yeah.
And then there is a time when we pass the baton to them that, hey, now the sales are happening, now money is coming in, you take the baton, right? We can still be involved. That's kind of how it happens.
And then the first few sales reps was the first few sales reps did you hire along with that leader, or that happens a few months out or something?
Yeah, so the leader is a little bit of a misnomer. They are actually doing the selling, right? Even if they are like the leader, they should act like a sales rep.
Yeah.
So the combination I would say you should hire is definitely the sales rep, maybe a leader acting as a sales rep, and an inside sales guy. Or a SDR. SDR is someone who can do phone calls. So the SDR can generate leads.
Yeah.
So you can buy a list or use ZoomInfo or something. They can generate leads, and then The SDR can call that customer,
Yeah.
and there's of course a certain level of rejection that happens. So,
Yeah.
but whoever wants to talk to you, then the sales guy can go initiate that conversation,
Makes sense. Yeah.
pull in the founder, and that's how the initial magic happens.
It happens. The other thing which I've heard from people is this is what we did. After that phase, you started hiring in pairs. So hired two AEs so that there was always a comparison set, two SDRs, and then two more. And so we could always sort of know what is working. If both of them are not working, there's a problem. Or if one of them is working and the other is not, what are the learnings from each one? And then you kind of keep
Yeah,
improving.
I mean, I would say you can actually track metrics quite well. You don't have to have to. You can remember the founder is the
Founder is already paid.
the founder is already paired with that guy, so
Yeah.
you can have that already.
That's true.
But then once things start working, then you can place a AE or a rep under that leader and go from there.
So this is great. So now we have hired the first early sales team. We are in like, I don't know, 5 million plus in ARR, like some significant number. And you are either hiring for additional folks or you are hiring the first real VP of sales, right? I've heard about your scorecard system for hiring both for technology people and sales folks, but like especially your go-to-market force. What is this scorecard system? What are you looking for in that scorecard?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the scorecard. But before that, I would say the go-to-market build-up needs to be thought of in multiple directions.
Okay.
Right. So it's not just the VP of sales, but you also need to, think about your lead generation machinery. You need to hire marketing. You need to hire, maybe a channel person. So there's all that hiring that goes hand in hand. But let's come to store scorecards. So here is a typical way people do hiring, which is obviously the wrong way. So most technical companies are started by technical people. These guys, know how to hire great engineers.
Right.
You ask a few puzzles in the whiteboard and, you're kind of done. That's not how you hire, salespeople or any non-technical person.
Right.
In fact, if you try that approach, what will normally happen, you can ask any puzzles. So you'll probably ask about what they've done in the past and stuff. And these guys have perfected the art of like appearing well in person, right? So it ends up being a chemistry match.
Yeah.
So you'll end up hiring for a chemistry match.
Yeah.
And while chemistry is important, it's not the only thing that's needed, right? So let's think in terms of what I call competencies, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you need 10 big competencies in the role,
Yeah.
right? Chemistry is one of them, that they need to have good competence, good chemistry with the founder.
Yeah.
But what about the ability to sell?
Yeah.
Right? What about the ability to charm customers? What about the ability to kind of run a good playbook, right? Having a good process in sales, right?
Yeah.
So there are a number of other competencies you need. So, what I recommend is that you make it very data driven. So you think about the competencies you need and divide them up into 3 groups and put them in what I call scorecards.
Yeah.
So the first scorecard is what I call a pre-interview scorecard.
Pre-interview scorecard.
This essentially is a resume match and maybe used in a phone screen. So this basically, you don't want to spend effort interviewing the person when the background of the person doesn't really match what you want. So if you have a company that's enterprise, we are selling into enterprises and it's a B2B company, then you need maybe one of the competencies you look for is a person who has that kind of background. So if the resume doesn't show that background is there, then no point interviewing, right?
Yeah.
So guess what? That goes as one of the competencies in the pre-interview scorecard. Another one might be that if you're hiring a sales leader, that this person has done sales management before. That another one might be that they've been in notable companies before. So whatever those competencies are, write them down, right?
Yeah.
Every scorecard should have no more than 10. Like I like to say, don't use small pebbles, use big rocks as competencies. So let's say you have up to 10 in your pre-interview scorecard, and then what you do is you score it, like you literally rate it. Right, you can use your rating mechanism, but what I recommend is use like 1 to 4 for every competency. 1 is poor, 2 is fair, 3 is good, 4 is excellent. And so this removes subjectivity. If you use 1 to 10, it's very hard. For the same guy, some person would give a 9, some person would give a 7, right? But when it's 1 to 4, it's very crisp. So you score these competencies, and then the goal is to hire someone who basically is above a certain threshold, right? So the fact that someone passes your pre-interview scorecard just means that they're good enough to be interviewed by you, right? And your team. So now comes the next scorecard, which is the interview scorecard. These are the competencies you test while you're interviewing the person. Like for instance, one of the things you may want to interview the person for is what is their playbook, right? And how good is it? Do they have a good process for how they run sales? And so do they have, if you're hiring leader, do they know how to hire people?
Yeah.
Right. So you ask questions along those lines, and then you rate those competencies.
Right.
Now, let's say you have some 10 competencies in your interview scorecard. You probably, one person may not be able to test all of them.
Yeah.
So if 3 or 4 people are interviewing the person, you
Yeah.
can divide up those competencies. Maybe you test 3 of them, another person tests 2 of them, and there is maybe some overlap.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the goal is to again rate them and select a person who scores very well in the interview
Right.
scorecard. And then the last one is reference check scorecard. So, I mean, people can fool you in an interview. They can basically regurgitate what they've seen, but they themselves may not know how to do it. And that's where the references are very important.
Yeah.
So you need to definitely do some blind reference checks, especially for important roles. And there itself, you need a bunch of competencies.
Yeah.
So the wrong way to do reference checks, well, the first wrong way is to not do reference check at all. The second wrong way is to call up the reference and say, "Hey, is this a great guy?" And the other side will probably say, "Yeah, I know." Right? Yeah, of course. And yeah, okay, done. Right? That's absolutely the wrong way to do reference checks. The right way to do reference checks is to think about the competencies you look for. Like, for instance, one of the competencies might be, would you hire this person again?
Yeah.
And I always ask it on a scale of 1 to 10 there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because people don't want to say something bad. So if they give a score of 6 or less, it's actually a fail. You want to see a score of 8 or above.
8 or above.
Right?
Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, would you hire the person again?
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how did the other good performers in your company view this person? Right? So you may have competencies like that.
Right.
And that's what makes for a good reference check.
Yeah.
And again, between these 3 scorecards, if a person is, I mean, nobody's at 10 on 10.
Yeah.
But if the scores are relatively high, that's the person you want to shoot for.
Yeah.
Right? So if you interview, let's say, I don't know, 4 or 5 people, go for the one with the highest score.
Yeah.
But the score needs to be above a threshold. I already said that if you're rating, like if 3 is good,
Yeah.
you want to look for people who score above a 3. Right? If it's less than a 3, then you keep looking. Right?
I could not agree with you more. The importance of blind reference
Blind
checks
references, yes.
is perhaps in my little experience, all the mistakes I've done, whenever I haven't done that, it is perhaps the biggest thing. And as Silicon Valley especially, you can get to a second order person very fast.
Yeah.
And not doing that is, I mean, listening to executive recruiters there, because their incentive is to close searches, right? And they were like, oh, don't really look at this reference, look at that reference, or don't look at this one. And you gotta be very methodical about it, and what signal do you pay attention to? Right?
Yeah, I'll give, for the audience, I'll give 2 tips. Sometimes people ask me, so how do you find these blind references?
Right.
Well, one tip is that you actually go on LinkedIn and you find shared connections between yourself and the candidate you're interviewing, and see if one of those shared connections has worked with this person, and that becomes a blind reference. That's one. But the second one is interesting. So you ask the candidate to provide some references, and these are their references. It's not a blind reference.
Yeah.
So then you ask the same kind of questions to that person.
Yeah.
Let's say you ask on a scale of 1 to 10, would you hire this person again? And obviously the person would probably give a high score, right?
Yeah.
So let's say they say 8 or a 9. Then you ask, okay, why not a 10? Right?
Right.
And then they're almost forced to reveal something. And then you ask, okay, in that situation, who else was there in that situation? So they'll divulge somehow, well, that person was there.
Right.
Then that becomes a blind reference.
That is actually, I have never heard this. This makes sense. That really makes sense. That's
Right.
really interesting. Yeah. One thing which we have done, like we use our investors a lot. Like, so at the HR partner, operating partner at one of the investors, they have and then the extended community. But this is a really good one.
Right.
This is the second order finding.
Look, what I've found is that, look, eventually all these people will be good at giving you suggestions, or maybe pointing some people at you. Eventually you're going to suffer if you hire the wrong person, right?
Right.
So you got to do the due diligence. Don't just blanket depend on other people. Do your due diligence, and maybe some people are right for some other companies, maybe not right for your company. And so an external person may still give a good reference that, hey, this is a good person, but when they join you, may not be the right person, right? So you got to figure out whether they're good for your company and your style. And that's what your competencies need to bring out.
Is the profile, Mohit, of the right, like I would say, go-to-market leader? It could be sales. You talked about channel marketing as well. Like we are living in the AI age.
Yeah.
You're talking about your current venture which you're
Yes.
building in, right? Is the profile changing a little bit of like the classic salesperson versus a little bit more AI native salesperson? Is there something like an AI native salesperson? And in your view, what does that look like?
I'll say the fundamentals of selling have not changed, right? I mean, they need to know the sales process properly. They need to be a hunter. They all those traits remain the same. But I think I would say if they are familiar with AI and what it means, and they can sell into a customer looking to buy AI, I think that's just a plus. So, but the basic fundamentals, I would not, sacrifice on. These are time-tested fundamentals.
Got it.
Yeah. So they have not changed with AI or no AI.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think one thing which we are seeing in like AI native companies, quote
Yeah.
unquote, or customers who are buying more, let's say, nebulous enterprise AI solutions, sellers who are more problem solvers, they can go into a situation and work with the customer on
Yeah.
a consultative basis to work backwards and say, "Chad, this is how my solution fits your needs," which is slightly different from a person who has 4 SKUs in their bag and they're rinsing and repeating that, as opposed to slightly more problem solving, and then being able to be more curious and being able to try AI tools.
But you see, what you're describing is actually a good sales guy even without AI.
That's
right?
true.
Person who can think on their feet, because
true.
even if you have 4 SKUs, different customers have slightly different pains,
That
and
is
how you can message it to that pain, is something that a creative.
So I guess I'm
sales
saying
guy
like
can think
more
of.
elite salespeople in the top
Yeah.
25, 30%
And-
have
yeah.
more leverage. They can
Precisely.
leverage more with technology, I guess, a
And
bit more. Yeah.
again,
Mm.
if you can get such people, these are like your A players, right?
Yeah.
But let's also agree that any organization will
Large
have 10,
audience.
15% A players, and the bulk of the people are not A players. And that's where that definition of a product market fit, that you still, average sales guy has to be
Average
sales. Yeah. So
yeah,
that person will not be that creative.
makes sense.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good on like rep profiling as well. Maybe if you're starting a new business unit, launching a new product, you need those top 25% to
Right.
lead that charge. And
That's
then,
right.
And maybe last question in this category. Now you have uniquely scaled 0 to 500 million plus couple of times. As you went through these stages of growth, you advised like this is about step one, but I'm like, in that journey, are you hiring for 2 years? Are you hiring for leaders who can run the full thing?
Well, look, the hope always is when you hire a person,
Yeah.
that the person,
Yeah,
goes
as far
long
as
term.
possible. Yeah.
But, anecdotally, the probability that your leaders will all survive beyond 2 years is, let's face it, it's less. And I'm not saying that we want to create a hire and fire culture, we want to fire them or something. But,
Yeah.
let's say your company is growing exponentially, right? 100% or more
Yeah.
year over year, the first couple of years. It's a very different company 2 years later. And whether this person is still the right leader for that job remains to be seen. Right. As a founder, if you're also the CEO, it's your job to continually assess that. And if they're not quite cutting it, maybe initially you can try to coach them or get them some coaching training. But if they still don't rise up to the occasion, then you need to bring somebody on top of them.
Yeah.
Or replace them, right? Whatever the case may be. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality. Not everyone is going to scale. Some will scale,
Yeah.
but some will not, and it's just very hard to tell that upfront.
Yeah.
When you hire, you cannot also hire that. Hey, I'm only going to hire a person who will scale for 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, you need to get the job done right now, right? And you may not, like, if you keep waiting for a person who can scale forever, you may take a long time hiring. So you need to get the people who will work for what you need right now, and then you reassess every 2 years or so.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Makes sense. Top 3 mistakes, early stage, sub 10 million ARR, or early stage, top 3 mistakes which you have done in go to market. Right?
The top mistake I made was not use hiring scorecards and just interview like
On feel.
on field chemistry
On
match. Right?
chemistry match.
The biggest mistake, like absolutely the biggest mistake. The second mistake that comes close is not generating enough of a pipeline.
Yes.
Like you get a guy, somebody recommends, oh, I like this guy, let me just hire. No, just create a pipeline. You may find a better guy, right?
Yes. Yes.
Even if you like a certain person, just create a pipeline, and you may be able to hire better. I think these are probably the top two
in terms of hiring.
in terms of hiring. So if you
And
just
go to market in general, marketing or partner.
same goes, same deal.
Same.
If you don't write down the competencies, right?
Yeah.
And look, many of the founders are doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And they may not even know what to look for, what
Exactly.
competencies to build. So that's where you leverage your advisors, maybe your board members, right? Do a brainstorming with them, find out the competencies you need to look for,
Yeah.
and then go hire for them, right? and definitely have people who've done it before.
Yeah.
Let them also interview, right? Maybe these are your advisors, so get some good advisors.
Yeah.
So it's very important. The other thing, the third mistake I would say is people. It's a little bit tied to the related to the second mistake. People will try to save money on recruiting for the most important roles. Just hire a good executive recruiter, right?
100%.
And I mean, these days, let's say I mean, different companies raise different amounts, but let's say you raise $10 million, spend 300K on executive recruiting, like 100K per recruit
Yeah.
per hire.
Perhaps.
I mean, get a great sales guy at the right time, get a great marketing leader, get a great engineering leader. I mean, that will make the company for you, right? As opposed to you shortchanging everything, hiring like a cheap recruiter, not being able to find like the
Yeah.
great guy,
Yeah.
and then you suffer.
When we first did it, we didn't even know who the best recruiters are. And I was like, what is tier one? We didn't know there were 3 tiers of recruiting firms. And there's a
Yeah.
difference between artisanal, the
Big.
Versacool group, whoever, versus
Big.
the rest, right?
Yes.
And the networks are different. The people they talk to are different. And you don't know as a first time founder. And it's just,
This is where you need a good. I mean,
that's why you need this podcast, step one.
you also need a good board,
Yeah.
good advisors, right?
Yeah.
So a mistake that some founders make is they go for the highest valuation. And I would say that if you're getting a great VC with somewhat lower valuation, I think that's a better deal than going for the highest valuation. Because this is the information then that VC will help you with, right? Having a good board is very important.
100%. Yeah. 100%. Thank you so much, Mohit. This was great. Really appreciate it. I think folks will really enjoy your perspective. I don't know how many founders I talked to at an early stage who left Google or Meta or something and are onto it, but are really clueless about navigating this go-to-market maze. So really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
I've learned some things the hard way. I will share as much as possible, so
I-
others don't have to do it the same way.
Exactly. Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely.